I remember the first time I switched to Linux. I was confident. I had watched enough videos, read enough Reddit posts. I thought I knew what I was getting into. I wiped my drive, installed Ubuntu, booted in, and within 48 hours, I was staring at a broken display driver, no Wi-Fi, and a terminal full of error messages I didn't understand. I fixed it eventually, but I wish someone had told me what I'm about to tell you before I touched that installer. Before we dive in, if you like the way I break this stuff down and you actually want to learn hacking the right way, Cyberflow Academy isn't just another learning platform. We provide focused, advanced courses in key areas like website hacking, bug bounties, OSINT, reverse engineering, and more. Material that goes far beyond what can be taught on YouTube. Otherwise, I'll get another strike. You also gain access to our active and ambitious Discord community, where you can reach me directly whenever you need guidance. And listen, I know that cybersecurity evolves fast, so I have made a commitment to constantly update the material and add new courses. We already have 500 plus members learning, landing bounties, and applying these skills in the real world. So what are you waiting for? Join through the link in the description and use code CYBERFLOW50 to get a whopping 50% off, so hurry up. The most important thing to understand before you do anything else is that Linux is not an alternative to Windows. It is a completely different relationship with your computer. On Windows, the operating system manages everything quietly in the background. Drivers install themselves. Updates happen automatically. Software comes in a neat installer that walks you through 5 clicks. Everything is designed to hide the complexity from you. Linux does not do that. Linux assumes you want to know what's happening. It surfaces the complexity instead of hiding it. That is not a flaw. That is the entire point. But if you go in expecting Windows behavior from a Linux machine, you will be frustrated constantly and you will quit within a week. So before anything else, adjust the expectation. You are not switching to a faster, cheaper Windows. You're switching to a system that will teach you how computers actually work in exchange for a steeper learning curve up front. Now let's talk about the thing that burns most people before they even get started: hardware compatibility. Not everything works on Linux out of the box. This is less of a problem than it was 5 years ago. Most common hardware is well supported now, but there are still categories that cause real pain. Wi-Fi adapters are the most common one. Certain Broadcom and Realtek chips have notoriously bad Linux driver support. You install the OS, everything looks fine, you try to connect to Wi-Fi, and the adapter isn't even detected. Fixing this requires either a wired connection or a USB Wi-Fi adapter that works, neither of which you'll have ready if you didn't see it coming. NVIDIA GPUs are another one. The open source Nouveau driver that Linux uses by default for NVIDIA cards is functional but limited. For gaming or GPU intensive work, you'll want the proprietary NVIDIA driver, which means an extra installation step after your first boot. Fingerprint readers often don't work. Some laptop-specific function keys don't work. Thunderbolt docks can be inconsistent. The fix is simple, but you have to do it before you install anything. Go to the Linux hardware database at linuxhardware.org. Search your laptop model or your specific components and check the compatibility ratings. 1 hour of research before installation will tell you exactly what you're in for. If your hardware is well supported, the installation will be smooth. If it's not, you need to know that so you can either prepare workarounds or pick different hardware. On that note, do not wipe your drive for the first installation. Set up a dual boot. Keep Windows or whatever you're currently running on one partition and install Linux alongside it. This gives you a fallback when things go wrong. And things will go wrong. Not catastrophically, but small things break during the learning phase. Having Windows available means you can look up solutions, download things you need, and stay functional while you're figuring Linux out. Most people who quit Linux in the first 2 weeks remove their existing OS too early. Give yourself 3 months of dual booting before you make a final decision either way. The terminal is unavoidable, and the sooner you accept that, the better. Every beginner guide says something like, modern Linux has great graphical tools. You barely need the terminal. That is misleading to the point of being harmful. Yes, you can browse the web and edit documents without touching a terminal, but the moment you need to troubleshoot anything, install a tool that isn't in the graphical software center, configure a service, do anything security related, or fix something that broke, you will need the terminal. If you've been avoiding it, you'll have no experience with it precisely when you need it most. Start using it from day one, not because everything requires it, but because you need to be comfortable in it before the situation is urgent. The commands you actually need to know to get started are fewer than you think. cd moves you between directories. ls lists what's in a directory. Sudo runs a command with administrator privileges. apt install installs software on Debian-based systems like Ubuntu. chmod changes file permissions. grep searches through text output. Man opens the manual for any command. If you don't know what something does, type man followed by the command name and it will tell you everything. That is genuinely enough to handle most situations in the first few months. Everything else you will learn as you need it. Choosing the right distribution matters more than most people realize. The Linux ecosystem has hundreds of distributions, different versions of Linux with different default software, different desktop environments, different philosophies. For most people switching for the first time, the choice comes down to a small handful. Ubuntu is the most beginner-friendly option with the largest community and the most documentation. If you hit a problem on Ubuntu, someone has already solved it and written it up somewhere. Fedora is slightly more cutting edge than Ubuntu, ships with newer software, and is what a lot of developers use as a daily driver. Linux Mint is built on Ubuntu, but with a desktop that feels more familiar to Windows users. If the adjustment feels overwhelming, Mint is worth considering. If you're here for cybersecurity specifically, Kali Linux and Parrot OS come with hundreds of security tools pre-installed, but they are not designed to be beginner daily drivers. Learn Linux basics on Ubuntu or Fedora first, then move to a security distribution once you understand what you're doing. Trying to learn Linux and learn security tooling simultaneously on Kali as your first experience is a reliable way to burn out. The package manager is one of the things Linux does genuinely better than Windows, and it's worth understanding why. On Windows, software installation means going to a website, hoping it's the right website, downloading an installer, running it, clicking through dialogues, and hoping there's no bloatware attached. On Linux, you run one command. Sudo apt install blc installs VLC. Sudo apt install git Python 3 nmap installs all three at once. Every package comes from a verified repository maintained by your distribution. Everything is checked, everything is clean, and everything gets updated with a single sudo apt upgrade command. No going to 12 different websites to check for updates on 12 different programs. One command updates your entire system. For security work, this is not just convenient, it's important. You know exactly where your software came from. File permissions will confuse you, and then they will change how you think. Every file on a Linux system has an owner and a set of permissions defining who can read it, write it, and execute it. In the beginning, you will hit permission denied errors constantly, and it will feel like the system is being unnecessarily difficult. It isn't. It is being precise. Learning what chmod and chown do, understanding the difference between running something as your regular user versus running it with sudo, understanding why certain files are owned by root and cannot be touched by regular users, this is not just Linux housekeeping. This is foundational security knowledge. Every privilege escalation exploit, every misconfigured server vulnerability, every local access CTF challenge comes back to permissions. You're not just learning to use a file system, you're learning to think about access control. When things break, and they will, the approach matters more than the specific solution. Copy the exact error message into a search engine, not a paraphrase, the exact text. Stack Overflow, Reddit, the Arch Wiki, GitHub issues, these will solve the overwhelming majority of problems you encounter. The Arch Wiki specifically is one of the best technical resources on the internet, and it applies to almost every Linux distribution, even though it's written for Arch. If the search doesn't immediately give you an answer, check the logs. journalctl-xe shows recent system logs. Most services write their own logs to var/log. The error is almost always described there in plain text, waiting to be read. Most people spend hours trying random fixes when the answer was sitting in the logs the entire time.
You still stuck in tutorial hell? We got full courses step by step as well. Web hacking labs, real attack flow, not click here, actually break the code. Reverse engineering, crack moves inside, Gidra open, ego died. Bug bounty methods that actually scale. Find one vuln, that's grocery money mail. $29, that's it bro. Skill goes up, that's Cyberflow. Python for hackers, C plus Spain. Build your own tools like this, that don't. New course dropping every month. No content drought, we stack it up. me fix that.